Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Hope your day's going well. I hope this video finds you in a good mood. If not, watch some cat videos and may change your perspective. No, I'm not going to do the ALS ice challenge. I think raising money for causes is a good thing, but it seems like it's gone too far in my opinion. Anyway, back to the topic. So what I'm going to do is go over, as I usually do, the hands-on and the current topics, and also talk about the lectures that are coming up and what I'm additionally asking you to cover in those things. But important always to connect and to remember that now that we're at week 2, staying up with this class can get challenging depending on where your level's at and where your schedule's at. So I've had a couple students reach out to me and they're going to come see me, and I highly recommend that if that's something you need, that you reach out and ask. I had anticipated requiring a Friday meeting for Hangout, and I'm still thinking about that because I'm trying to figure out how many of you have webcams and have that technology available. And I don't know, so I think I'll include that in next week's current topics. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn to the material I have for this week and see what you need to do. Okay, so I'm going to start with the current topics. So we are moving into our web development. So even though we're in the week 3, and let's just kind of look here because I'll actually come back to this in a minute. When I go over to lectures, right? So you're, by the time you've watched this, gotten through this second part of the lecture, talking about the way and really focusing on protocols here and really focused on that trace route that we'll talk about in the hands-on. And then we'll start into our web development lectures. So one topic that I'd like to kind of do before we get into the web development lectures is really about hosting. So hosting is the idea of putting your web pages out there, creating a website. And there are definitely many different ways to do this for free. Now, I'm not recommending free, but I want you to know the different ways and the different services that are out there. So each of you need to find, and I'd be shocked if there wasn't enough because there's about 20 something students in here, and I'm fairly sure there's over 20 something different ways to host free web pages. So you may have to get a little creative if you wait in this particular assignment. The sooner you post it, the better. So I want you to find some kind of free hosting that's out there, or a free way to put your web pages / site right out there. And then talk about, and that's what I say is you write 150 words and talk about the pros and the cons of your selected service, because there are definitely pros and cons for the different services that are out there. Okay, so that's your first topic for next week. And the second thing is I want everyone to have these pictures, right? So I'm going to show you just real quickly how to do it. It's not that hard. Some of you already have, so that's cool. But I'm going to come over here to a new tab. Not sure why that suddenly froze, but if you come up to the top here, if you haven't loaded it, you'll notice that you don't have a picture here, so you just click on it. And when you click on it, you may have to jump through a couple hoops there I've already done, but if you hit settings and privacy, then you can change that picture. So here is what's important, right, is to have 280 by 280. So the question may come up, how do you modify images to be this size? And I covered this in one of the beginning lectures, but a really simple website, as a reminder, I will tell you, is pixlr.com, which would allow you to upload images and modify their size. Just a really simple site. For doing this, you don't have to set up an account. Just launch the web app, open your photo, whatever, and then open it from your computer, modify it, and then you're good to go. Okay, so that is the current topics that I want you to do, and don't forget, you have to do replies, but I do give you until the following Monday, but you have to have your videos posted before that Thursday night due date. Okay, all right, so that's that one. So now let's look at, I've talked about lectures, I'll come back to this in a second though. So now, coming back here for a second, so now that you've gotten through the third lecture, and Tom really covers this idea of actually the trace route, how to read the trace route, how to find different things. Like he shows how it jumps across the you can tell that point at which it leaves the United States and goes over to the foreign countries, and you can tell that. So I'm going to take a little twist on this because the trace route, as cool as it is, and I think it is good, so I definitely recommend as you're actually watching those lectures, you do those same trace route commands. In addition, there's really some cool online tools, and what I want you to do is find, you're going to take two different sites, and you're going to find the physical location where these websites are hosted. And you can do it either through looking at the trace route, especially the end entries, right? So remember, and I'll pull to my screen now, when he showed CNN, and don't use CNN.com, but you can see how he determined based on some of the names where this was located. Now, there are also some great tools online. Now, there are many, so this is just one example. Please find other examples of ways to do this, right? But there's also ways to do visual trace route tools online. And what's nice about these is they actually show you these different hops, right? So you can see how many different hops that it took. And I think it would be good in your output, in your writing here, to talk about maybe the differences or the similarities between these two outputs and talk about why that might be true. But again, keep in mind here that there's other tools you could use. So really what I want you to do, and let's just go through this, is first consider a well-known site. Don't use the stuff covered in lecture 3, and attempt to find the hosting server's geolocation. So wherever that website server's location is, okay, and that's really what Traceroute will tell you. And there's various ways to do it. Like I said, coming back, you can either do it by looking at Traceroute, you can do it by finding the IP, locating the IP. However you do it, and I suspect some of you will do it through Traceroute. Some of you may do that visual Traceroute tool that I showed, but do some research, okay? Because there are different tools out there that do this. But here's the key, is that you all need to use a different site for this first one, okay? So then once you determine its location, either post a print screen of how you determined it, how you figured it out, or whatever service you used. I prefer you find a service out there, not necessarily the one I'm showing, although it's a pretty popular one, and upload it. Right? And don't do a full print screen. Do a partial print screen. If it shows your IP, then get rid of, blur that out. Write 100 words about the tool you use and any surprises that came out of your research. Now, the second one is a similar thing, but this time I want you to select those inspiration sites that you did for the last week's current topic. So I had you all that did the assignment, and most of you did, I think, in this case. Whatever the site that you selected, I want you to do something similar, right? Do that same process of finding where its geolocation of the server is and posting a link to the tool or how you figured out what the answer to that was, okay? Now, one thing I want to say here on these links is making sure you're sharing them correctly, and also making sure, because there's actually a reason I have you do headings for links. One is that it makes it easier for me to actually click on stuff depending on what device I'm on, right? So remember, I like headings for links. And also when you're doing links, make sure that you're also, let me go ahead and do this, 5, right? And that when you also do the link, that you're selecting open in new. And in this case, new blank would be a new, In this case, it typically opens in a new tab, but it could also open in a new window as well. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you guys are doing that, okay, when you're posting this. So in this case, you do have 100 words you have to write for each of those topics. So again, first you're selecting a well-known site. Don't select the ones that Tom covered in lecture. Select something else, and then find out its location of the server, and then choose your inspiration site and do the same thing. Okay, so post any questions you have. Remember that I did get one question here from Lori, and I apologize, Lori, I didn't see it until the day after you posted it. But in general, that's the idea, is if you're running into challenges with this stuff, post any help you need there. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about is lectures. So let's go back here. No, I thought I had it already open somewhere. I did. Okay. So starting in week 4 and 5, you're going to get into the web development lectures. Okay. So in this case, I want you to, and let me come back and tell you this, I want you to code up what Tom covers in the lecture. And code up means basically open a text editor. Now in this case, you can just use something as simple, and I'll show this, as Notepad. But I would also, and I'll probably have a topic next week about this, start talking about the different editors that are out there. Like I use various ones. I use one called Brackets. I use one called Sublime. You'll see when I turn to my computer in a minute, I also use one called Text Edit. So there's not one particular one I'd recommend, but I want you to start thinking about one you might want to try out. But in general, here's what you do. So I'm gonna show you first, right? So you can go in to Notepad. It's not one I recommend, but for quick and easy, it'll get the work done. So you're coding this up, right? And you're following along with his lecture. You're actually coding, taking notes at the same time, so your code doesn't replace your notes. You're just an additional item you have to do. And then when you're done, you do File, Save As. Now here's the key. If you're actually doing this in Notepad, right, you actually have to do this. And that's fine, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and actually what I would do here, and let me just do this, is I would actually create a CIT, a folder, right? And I'd put files, something like that. It's probably not the best name, but it's a name, right? And in this case, the key is you just change the extension. So there's actually a name that makes sense to use here, and it's called index.html. So by changing the extension, okay, we change actually how the computer understands that file. And actually in lecture, he talks about this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Great. Now in this case, I'm going to allow you to do something normally I don't do, which is I'm just going to allow you when you've done your, remember, you've done your write your notes, and then you can just browse to find that file and give me the file, because we'll actually look at hosting later. Different hosting showing you how to do uploads. So I'm actually going to go to desktop. I put it in a directory called CIT. I just created it. There it is. And then there will be one file, okay? So I'm actually going to show you this file in a different way, but I want you to see that's what you would do, okay? And then you would open it, and then it would place it into here. So normally I'd like you to do everything out on the cloud, but there'll be nothing but code in this HTML file, okay? So I want to show you. I'm actually going to go back to my desktop and actually show you. I must have it not showing my... I do. I think I have my Windows desktop set not to show anything. So I'll look at it this way. So I'm going to go into that directory. So there's a couple of things about this. You can tell by looking at this which browser I have as a default. Okay, kind of interesting. And if you double click on it, then it will bring up the file, and you're looking at this from the local perspective. Now in this case, because I didn't put anything in there, there's not anything. And we'll talk about when you're doing development how this is one way to do it, very simple, very simplistic way to do it. There's other higher end ways to do this, and I'll turn back to you guys now, that actually as you get into development you'd be looking at. So you'd actually have virtual servers sitting on your local computer in order for you to see what these files would look at once they're put out on a server. But again, this is all the stuff you're learning about in this class. So coming back to the requirement. So the requirement for lecturers 4 and 5 are, in addition to your notes, you also code up the file, and then after your notes, make sure you're using headings here. After the notes, just give me your index.html, okay? And of course, he starts it, he does a lot of changes to it, so I want to see it where he ends up, because I have you pause half, I only have you watch about 50 minutes of the lecture. So wherever he stops, where that file is at that state is where you would give it to me, and then the same would be true. You'd pick up that file and do the rest of it on lecture 5. Okay? All right, so I think that's it. I hope you enjoy the next couple of weeks in this class, or the next week in this class. We are all off Monday, like I said before, but I will have attendance ready for you to do Monday or Tuesday. It is coming up to the place in this class, though, that you really got to make sure you're doing the work and doing the attendance, because if you miss more than 2 weeks and you're not doing work, that's when I start to go, uh-oh, I'm concerned, okay? But most of you are doing a fine job. I did notice a significant number of you did not do the current topics for the domains, and here's my guess for that, was that it was because that video was an hour long, and I said you didn't have to consume the whole thing, but enough of it to understand the concepts behind it. So those of you that did spend time consuming it seemed to get a lot out of that, and so remember, if you don't do something, well, I should say this more clearly, is that I do accept late work. I don't really like to in an advanced class, but here's the idea. I want you to keep up with the work. So if you're posting it late, just know that it's going to get discounted 25%. Okay? It's better than nothing, though. That's the truth. All right. Peace out. Have a great weekend. See you later.